Hello, my name is Daryl Stockton Lewis. I served 3 terms on the Shasta County Grand Jury and loved it. I am now a member of the Shasta County Grand Jury Jurors Association, as are all the others who will be speaking with you today. We are here to provide information on what it means to serve on the grand jury and how to apply to become a grand juror. Each of today's presenters will introduce themselves as they speak, starting with Ray.
I'm Ray Frisbee. I am going to provide you with some information about what the grand jury is, what it does, its primary function, its jurisdiction, how it operates, and some interesting, I think, and unique features of the grand jury. But first, let's go back a bit. Grand juries have been around since 1200s in England. Came to the United States, or to America, I should say, by way of the English colonies, starting with Massachusetts, but very quickly all of the English colonies had some form of a grand jury. And then when California became a state in the mid-1800s, one of the requirements of the California Constitution was then, and still is, that a grand jury be impaneled in each county every year. And if you look down here at the bottom of your screen, you can see a grand jury from Shasta County in the late 1800s. And I'm sure you've noticed that there's quite a bit of difference between a grand jury at that time and a grand jury today. Women are now welcomed and a vital part of the grand jury system. So what does the grand jury do? If you ask many people, what they would say is criminal indictments. That's what the grand jury does. The grand juries at the federal level and at the state level still do this quite often, as you've probably read in the newspaper. But local grand juries, county grand juries in California seldom use this, do this purpose. Another function of the grand jury could be an accusation against a public official. That is, if the grand jury is made aware of evidence of malfeasance or corruption in office, they can start the process of removing a public official from his or her position. But what the grand jury does most of the time, almost all of its time, is spent with this function, that is the oversight of local government. Grand juries are empowered and instructed by the Superior Court to act as a watchdog for the citizens of the county over its local government activities. So what do? Well, biggest thing that the grand jury does is look at the way local governments, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what is local government, because that's really what the grand jury is involved with, how they do their business. Are they doing things that they should do and not doing things that they should not do? Many of you have probably heard of the Brown Act, California's open meeting law. Are boards following the requirements of the Brown Act? And then mostly, are government entities providing the citizens with the services that they want and need in the best manner? Is there a better way of doing something? So if the grand jury finds a problem or a shortcoming or has an idea of how to improve things, they must provide a recommended change in the way things are being done. So what is local government? Very quickly, the county. The largest part of local government is probably the county. County has many functions and thus many departments to carry out those functions. 3 cities in Shasta County, Anderson, Redding, and Shasta Lake, all have a number of other functions that they carry out. And then Shasta County has close to 40 special districts that provide services, usually a single service like fire protection or mosquito abatement or cemetery. And then there are also some 26 school districts within the county. So how does a grand jury decide what to investigate of all of that? Well, one requirement that's made by the penal code is that the grand jury inquire into the public prisons in the county. So in Shasta County, Sugar Pine Conservation Camp, the county jail is also now considered a prison of sorts. And then the grand jury often looks at the juvenile hall facility. They have the authority to look at any local government agency, department, function. Some of these cross departments or cross entities, like preparing for wildfires in your area. And then the grand jury also receives some 20 to 40 complaints from citizens about things that they think the grand jury should look into. And then sometimes the grand jury just decides that something is of interest to the community. They've heard people talk about it, like the red light camera program in Reading. So they have actually twice investigated that particular function and reported on it. So once the investigation is completed by the grand jury, they may choose to issue a report that goes to, as you can see, the agencies, the governing bodies, and importantly, the public, so that the people know what it is that the grand jury has uncovered and their recommendations for change. Each of these reports contains findings, which are the conclusions that the grand jury reaches on the basis of their investigation. And then, as I mentioned, if they find a shortcoming, they must provide a recommendation. So grand juries are a little different than many other government bodies. Some describe the grand jury as the most independent of government bodies. One of the reasons for this independence is the way the grand jury is set up. Grand jury operates as an arm of the Superior Court, but they're funded by the county. The county provides the money to carry out this function. Collegiality, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is the way the grand jury makes its decisions. And then confidentiality, something that's very different than most other government bodies. Now, the grand jury, as an independent body, adopts its own procedures, chooses its officers, with the exception of the foreperson who is chosen, selected by the court, what they're going to look into, what they're going to investigate, and whether and when to release reports based on what they found. Many of these decisions require a supermajority. That is, since there are 19 members of the Shasta County Grand Jury, at least 12 of those 19 must agree for a number of these decisions. Collegiality, as I mentioned, refers to the way decisions are made in the body. Many of you have probably worked for law enforcement or been in the military or worked for a large corporation. All of these are hierarchical in nature, and for good reason. Decisions are made at the top and people follow those decisions. The grand jury makes its own decisions. They vote on things. The foreperson, who has a very important role in the grand jury, also only has one vote. So when votes are taken, the majority rules. Because of this, it's very important to have a number of people from different backgrounds, experiences to make up the grand jury. And then lastly, confidentiality. Most government entities are concerned about being transparent, not the grand jury. Grand juries are required to maintain confidentiality. They cannot talk about things that they have found out unless they unless it comes out in a final report. And this requires them to continue that forever. The reason for this is to protect people who provide information to the grand jury so that their Identity will never be revealed as the source of that information. And so no transparency laws, no Brown Act applies to the grand jury. And now let's talk about how the grand jury is chosen in Shasta County. Jean.
Hi, I'm Jean Jelke, and I serve 2 terms as a grand juror. You may be wondering how the grand jury is chosen. Well, in Shasta County, it is chosen from people who have volunteered to be considered as grand jurors. And you fill out an application to be a volunteer grand juror. Each grand juror must fulfill at least the following legal qualifications in order to be considered. First of all, you need to be a U.S. citizen. You need to have lived in Shasta County for at least 1 year prior to the beginning of your term as a grand juror. You need to be 18 years or older, and you need to be able to speak in English and read in English, because that is the language that the grand jury uses for deliberations. Finally, you cannot have been convicted of a felony. Those are all the legal qualifications. There are also some other considerations or qualifications that you really need to ask yourself. Probably the most important of these, at least at the beginning of your consideration, is, do you have the time? It is about 15 to 20 hours a week for a whole year on average that you would have to devote to some aspect of your grand jury service: meetings, research, tours, and interviews. Again, as has been mentioned, you have to be able to maintain confidentiality, but you need to think about your situation. Do you have a place at home where you can do your research in private? Do you share a computer with someone else? So these are questions you need to ask yourself, because you cannot reveal, as been mentioned, anything about what you were investigating until the final report to everyone in your circle of friends and family. And finally, do you have good judgment? And what that refers to is the ability to approach your investigations with an open mind, that you are somebody that is able to listen to others objectively and respectfully, even if they don't have the same opinion as yours. And you reserve judgment or decisions until you've seen all of the evidence. So once you've decided to apply, where is the selection process pick up from there? So the applicants are all reviewed and then interviewed by a panel of people representing the court, the Shasta County Counsel's Office, the district attorney, and previous jurors. This panel and their recommendations and their observations will be submitted to the Superior Court judges. The judges in turn will look over the group of applicants, and out of that group of applicants, they will select up to 30 individuals that they feel would make good grand jurors, and they will be then issued a summons to attend what's called impanelment. This impanelment date is usually in June, and at that time, all of the people in the grand jury pool will come and literally listen as names are drawn out randomly from a hopper, as you can see on the screen. The first 19 names that are drawn out of the hopper will be seated as grand jurors and sworn in by the presiding judge. The remaining names in the hopper will then be drawn out one at a time, and they will become the alternates that will fill any vacancies that might arise during the year following. And now I would like to invite Ray to conclude this slideshow of our presentation.
Thanks, Jean. Jean's just explained how easy the process is to apply as a grand juror. This is an opportunity for you to serve your community, to learn about things that are going on, and really to make a positive impact on what goes on in your community. So I encourage you to do that. If you have more questions, some of the things that we've mentioned, you can get more information at this website. You can see www.shastacountygrandjury.org. You'll see there, if you go to that site, an application, frequently asked questions. So there's a lot of information there for you. So thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Molly.
Thank you. So hello, I'm Molly Schneider, and I've had the privilege of serving as a Shasta County Grand Jury foreperson. I'm here to share with you a bit about my experience as a grand juror. Now, for me, the two greatest rewards of service were the intellectual stimulation and the social connection. It was an opportunity for me to work with 18 other members of my community, most of whom I wouldn't have been able to meet otherwise. It was also sort of a reunion with others. For example, in my case, I was sworn in alongside a juror who had been a mom with me working at a co-op preschool that our children attended 20 years ago. Another juror and I worked together professionally 30 years ago. And another was a dad I saw at high school performances when both our daughters were in show choir. And that's pretty neat. And there we all were, impaneled, ready to work toward that common goal of investigating operations of local government in an effort to make a positive difference in our community. Again, pretty neat. Now, some of you may be concerned, yipes, I don't know the first thing about law or government workings. Where do I or my jury begin? Well, don't worry, you'll have plenty of support. First of all, trainers from the California Grand Jurors Association will be educating you step by step via excellent lectures and manuals during the training days. Once you start your work, additional questions will inevitably come up, and you'll have your manuals to refer to. And if you should get stuck, those grand jury trainers are only a phone call or email away, and they really do get back to you promptly. You'll also have your legal advisors, the court administrators, and the presiding judge's resources. And of course, the county IT crew to help when you run into those pesky computer snags. Together with your fellow jurors, you'll delve into your investigations with curiosity, doing research, interviewing witnesses, and doing site tours, all in an effort to identify operational problems within local government and ways that you can improve those systems. With the grand jury, you'll have a forum, the grand jury report, to explain these findings and make recommendations. And sometimes, as you delve into your work, you'll find operations that are working especially well. And within your forum of producing a report, you have an opportunity to report those positives as well. Now, in all fairness, I don't want to mislead you. It's not always a rose garden. There can be difficult questions and differences of opinion. However, by always coming back to that core mission of making our community a better place, the jury will find clarity. We enter into our discussions with inquisitiveness and exchange our ideas in a respectful manner, learning from each other. That's teamwork. That's growth, which, by the way, was voiced by one of my fellow jurors to be his greatest joy in the whole experience. Now, I think you'll find that there's a tremendous sense of community within the jury as you work closely with your new colleagues. We've had members become ill and otherwise run into challenging life events such as a death in the family. And it warmed my heart to see the other jurors rally to lend support and care. We had a party during which we celebrated the holidays with our spouses and members of the Shasta County Grand Jurors Association. It was lots of fun. Many of us made new lifelong friends. Our jury created a camaraderie that we hope will spread into the community. So I encourage you to toss your hat in the ring and apply for next year's Shasta County Grand Jury. It really is pretty neat. So now I'd like to pass the baton over to Daryl.
Thank you, Molly. One of my greatest rewards as a Shasta County Grand Juror was learning about fact-based government. Fact-based government, sorry. And lastly, my personal brand is that I am the change I want to see. It's just simple. And please allow me to introduce Karen.
Thank you, Daryl. My name is Karen Jar. I'm a retired attorney. I provided legal services to the grand jury when I served as the Shasta County Counsel. And now I'm a volunteer with the California Grand Jurors Association. What I'd like to do is share with you the application that we hope you'll fill out and submit. Here's what it looks like. On the first page, you'll see those qualifications and disqualifications that Jean went over with you. Then on the second page, there is a request for information concerning your background, your employment, and your education. There are also questions about your computer skills because you'll be spending time conducting research and communicating with your colleagues using your computer. The application also requires that you provide the contact information for 3 personal or professional references. Then on this page, the application you fill out will have 3 important dates. The first is the impaneling ceremony when the judge swears in the grand jury, and this usually occurs in mid-June. Your application will also indicate the 3 half-days of the local orientation program, followed usually in July by a 2-day training program presented to you by the California Grand Jurors Association. And the last significant part of the application is the essay. Applicants must submit an essay of up to 150 words about why they want to apply for grand jury services. That's the application. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jean for information about the qualifications in the application process.
No. You're going to turn it over to Ross.
Yes, I would like to ask you some questions. The panel, some of these questions are already found in our guide at Shasta County Grand Juror. And let's start with Ray, since you're already there. Ray, the Shasta County Grand Jury reports really make a difference?
Well, I'll tell you, Ross, my simple answer to that is yes. You can look back. There was a time in the past, for many of you, way past, when the local libraries in Shasta County were shut down as a cost-saving measure. A publication by the Reading Library acknowledges the contribution that several grand jury reports had on the decision to finally reinstate the funds and open the libraries. Sometimes it happens more quickly than that. A few years ago, the grand jury found that the Board of Supervisors had possibly mistakenly included some other individuals in a decision on pay raises that was going to cost the citizens of the county about $250,000. They quickly made the change and saved that money. And then sometimes you find that it's not even necessary for a report to be written. A jury in 2022, 23 was investigating concerns that the city of Reading was using the park in Enterprise as a dumping ground for different things from different departments without a lot of control. Before the report even came out, that change was made. So it's not even always necessary for the report. Sometimes just the grand jury poking their nose in makes a big difference.
Great. Thank you, Ray. And I have to agree with you. One of the investigations that I was involved in, we could see changes being made even before we issued the report. So it's really, really worth your time to be on the grand jury and do this type of work. And Gene, I've got a question for you. If I am selected as a grand juror, how many hours per week would I be expected to devote to the grand jury work?
Well, it does vary from time to time during the year, but sometimes a bit more, a bit less. And it also depends on how many committees you decide to sign up for. But on average, it was something on the order of 15 to 20 hours a week. That is not always in meetings. That might be also including research that you do or other activities that you may be doing. It is kind of up to you how much you're willing to put in and how much you're going to get out.
Thank you. How about if I have a vacation plan during the year? Would it be all right if I did this if I was serving as a grand juror?
Yes, we expect as an individual who has a life outside of the grand jury that you're going to have times when there's a vacation or a family event or a medical appointment or whatever that's going to require you to not be able to make some of the meetings. In that case, you just need to give the foreperson and the committee chairs that you're involved with a heads up and in advance so that workarounds can be done or that it can be done in a time when things are a little bit at a lull.
Great. Thank you, Gene. Molly, I've got a question for you. Who would make a good grand juror?
I think the best way to sum that up would be someone who's interested, willing, and can keep a secret. Okay, but what I mean by that is you want to be interested in your local government, learning about it, interested in grand jury law, and then willing to cooperate with others. If you already have the skills of interviewing, writing reports, that's wonderful, but you have to have the willingness to do it in a manner that is mandated by the grand jury. So it's a willingness to conform to a new recipe, if you will. And then lastly, the keep a secret thing is a big deal. You've got a lot of very confidential information that will be coming to you. And as tempting as it might be to share it with your family or friends, you can't. It would be improper, and you just have to vow that you won't. So if you're one that can't keep a secret, this may not be a thing for you, but you can talk about it among your jurors. So there are still people you can talk to it with.
Great. Thank you, Molly. And Karen, why volunteer for the Shasta County Grand Jury?
There are several reasons why you might want to apply. First, you're going to have the opportunity to learn a lot more about how local government works. And you're going to have the opportunity to interview and meet with local public officials, something you might not ordinarily have the chance to do. Also, you're going to develop skills. You're going to learn more about how to conduct investigations, conduct interviews, and how to write and edit effective reports. When doing so, when writing your reports and issuing recommendations for how local government can improve their operations, you're going to be really benefiting your community. You're going to help make these local governments more effective, more transparent, and more accountable. Really, it could be said that there's probably no other volunteer activity open to you here in Shasta County that would give you more of a chance to make a difference on such a broad scale. Please apply. Thank you.
Okay. In closing, we hope that you will apply today to become a grand juror. And please go to www.shastacountygrandjury.org. Thank you for watching our video today.